What's up YouTube, Redbeard's Garage, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be putting a Mikuni 22mm carburetor on the street go-kart. Now, Go Power Sports sent us a Mikuni 22mm carburetor because our Predator carburetor was messed up a little bit. The fuel shutoff was broke off the carburetor, and it was also the float was starting to stick and it would flood the carburetor out, which wasn't a big deal. We could have fixed that, but I really hate the Predator stock carburetors. They're real janky, and you never get a real good throttle feel. It's pretty much, you can't really fade the throttle in, you know, when you're driving it, so I think they suck, and you got to make that big throttle setup for them, which is just unnecessary. The Mikuni is super simple and gives you a massive, better throttle. And you also get a big performance gain because it is a little bit bigger carburetor and letting a little bit more air into that head. Now also there's links in the description below where you can get all these products, as well as a 10% discount code to save you some guap on them go-kart parts. So let's jump on the workbench, show you these parts, and get them installed on the street go-kart. Okay, so we have all the parts setting up on the workbench here. We have the air filter with the barb that I had installed in the end of it for the nitrous kit. There'll be a separate video on that. We also have the adapter that lets you bolt the Mikuni carburetor onto your head. And of course we have the Mikuni 22mm carburetor. Now this should be huge performance gains as well as a lot better throttle response. And we of course have all the nuts and bolts to install this kit. So we're going to jump on the go-kart and remove the factory carburetor and get to installing this go-kart goodness. Okay, first step to installing the Mikuni is of course removing your old carburetor. We have the aftermarket air filter on ours, but it should be pretty much the same process. First I want to remove that little breather filter off the valve cover just to get it out of our way. It's not really necessary to remove. And then we can take off the hose clamp on the air filter, get it loosened up, and go ahead and pull that air filter off. Then we have two 10mm nuts in the end of this air filter adapter. Yours will have them in the front of the air box, and we can get those removed. Then we have to unhook the fuel line. Make sure to drain the fuel bowl on the bottom of the carburetor so no gas will get anywhere. And then we can proceed to pulling this off. I always unhook my throttle linkage first. Mine comes off really easy. Yours probably will not. The best way to do it is slide your carburetor forward a little bit, and then that'll allow you to pull that rod straight up. It'll be nice that we don't have to use this old throttle mechanism no more. That is kind of tedious on Predators. So let's grab the 10mm deep well and we'll get these pulled off. Okay, so we have those off. We're going to slide this air filter adapter off and set it aside as we won't be needing it anymore. Okay, first I'm going to drain all the fuel before we pull this carburetor all the way off. There's two 10mm in the bottom of the bowl. The one that's up on the side is usually the one you use to drain it, or you can crack that bottom one. It doesn't really matter which one you use. So let me grab an oil pan and we'll get that drained. Okay, so we have that pan sitting under there. I'm going to go ahead and undo the center one and let it drain that way. Okay, sweet. Dropped my socket in the gas. That's always awesome. One problem we was having with this carburetor is it was pushing gas out the air filter, probably because the float was stuck. But I had the Mikuni sitting over on the shelf, so there's no point in not using it. I went ahead and pinched the fuel line because I didn't want to waste all that gas. Now we're going to pull that gasket off the carburetor and set it aside. Now we can unhook that fuel line and pull the carb the rest of the way off. We got some pliers to pull that clip off the carburetor. Let that drain any excess gas out. Now we can slide the carburetor right off the studs. Next we're going to remove these studs. I always just take a set of pliers, grab a good bite on them, and you can twist them off. You can put two nuts and back them up against each other on the threads, and then loosen the inner nut and it'll pull that stud out, but this is just as easy and you don't really have to worry about damaging this rod. Okay, so we got that last stud out of the engine. Now we're going to need to remove this backing plate by popping the spark plug wire out of it and just removing it right off the engine. We won't need this anymore. As you can see, the shape of that port, and basically this was blocking off all kinds of room on that port. So you will notice a big performance upgrade from swapping from the stock carburetor to this Mikuni. Okay, so I went ahead and made me a new gasket for this carb setup because I just felt like metal to metal wasn't going to be good enough. And I'm also going to be using some blue Loctite. Okay, so I put a dab of blue Loctite, get everything lined up. Okay, so we got that neck on there, and I went ahead and cut my Allen head down because it actually wouldn't fit down in there. I'm gonna go ahead and tighten this neck up and get that finished, and then we can go to mounting the carburetor. Okay, we got that neck all installed on there. Now we can go to putting the Mikuni carburetor right on there, and you don't need a gasket right here as the Mikuni has an O-ring that will seal that off just fine. Okay, we're ready to install the carburetor. I'm going to feed the nuts in through the back of the adapter because one side of the Mikuni doesn't have enough room for the head of the nut to seat through. I'm going to hold the back of these nuts and slide this carburetor right into place. Now, as you notice, you can clock your carburetor if you need to, depending on your application. We're going to get ours nice and level, and then we can put our nuts and lock washers on. Okay, so we got our nuts started on that carburetor. Now we need to make sure that we clock it level because we don't want gas pouring out the bowl. So we just get it clocked level, and then you can go ahead and tighten the nuts and those Allen heads up. Okay, so we got that carburetor all mounted up. Pretty quick install. Now we just need to route the throttle cable. First, you're going to have to untwist the top of the carburetor, and be careful, there is a spring inside. Then you need to reach down in it and grab the slide, and then we can install the throttle cable onto this slide. Okay, when installing the throttle cable, you need to take the cap to the Mikuni carburetor and slide the small barrel in through the cap, and then you can seat it all the way down on there, and that cap won't slide no further past that outer casing. Then you need to slide the spring on. This is a lot easier to do, by the way, before you put the throttle cable on the bike or go-kart. And then there's a long notch down the side of the barrel, and you can slide that in the end of it, push the spring back, get the spring seated in the bottom of that barrel, and then you can go slide it right in your carburetor. Okay, now you'll notice there's a wide notch on one side of the barrel and a long slit on the opposite side. If you look down inside the carburetor, you'll see a notch about middle ways, and the one that's a middle ways, the long slot goes on that side. So you just gently slide it around until the slide will slide all the way down in place. Then you can thread the cap on. Okay, we have that new air filter. We're just going to slide it on the place, and I just noticed my nitrous valve is going to hit this catch can, so I'm going to have to clock the catch can first. Let me loosen these hose clamps, and I can clock it real fast. Now we can go ahead and slide our air filter on now that I got that catch can out of the way. Get it seated all the way down on there. We can tighten up that hose clamp now. Okay, so to adapt this throttle cable to my go-kart, this is more suited for a pit bike or a mini bike. It has the 90-degree bend, and that's what would go into the hand throttle or the wrist throttle. Basically what I'm going to do is unthread this elbow off there, and then I can actually just cut this barrel off the end, because I have some barrels that you just slide the cable in and tighten down the Phillips head screw, because I won't need this barrel on there. So what I'm going to do is unthread the neck right there, go ahead and cut that barrel, and I can slide this right off, and it'll be perfectly suited for my application. Yours may differ, it just depends on how your cart build is or your bike. But the throttle cable that comes with this setup is made for a pit bike. But no worries, we can adapt it. Okay, to keep my wires from fraying, what I like to do is take a soldering gun and tin the tip a little bit and set it up under the cable. Let that cable warm up for a little bit, and then it should absorb the solder, and that'll keep the wire from fraying when you cut into it. Okay, as you can see, the cable is now taking the solder. So now when I cut this wire, it shouldn't fray apart on me. Okay, as you can see now, I cut that tip off and it's not frayed any. I do have a little bit of solder out there, but that'll keep your wire from fraying apart. As you, if you ever need to take your cable off, you'll notice it'll fray more and more over time. So I'm just going to nip that little excess off there, and we're ready to install this on the go-kart. Okay, so this is how my throttle setup is. I put a little throttle hold down off of the original Predator throttle setup. You can take these off if you ever remove that and use them on other applications like this. And as you can see, it holds that wire really well, and then it runs over to this rod, and when you push the pedal, of course, it will pull on the throttle butterfly. So all we have to do is take this end off. It's a 10mm wrench to hold the actual eye steel, and then a Phillips head that holds the bites down on the wire. Now we can remove this old junk and get it out of our way. I'm going to be reusing that eye. Okay, next I can take the 8mm holding the throttle hold down. Holding the throttle hold down. Go ahead and just pull that cable out there. Slide that out. Now we can get our new one from the Mikuni and slide it in. Probably going to have to open this up a little bit more. I'm going to set it kind of like that because that end's a little bit too big to go in this throttle hold down. And just tighten that down. That will hold that from going anywhere, and we can slide our new cable through that hole. It's a little longer than we need it, but we can trim it down later. Slide the cable in that eye. Like I said, we soldered this all up real nice, so the cable won't fray or anything with us. We got that tightened down just a little bit. Now we can get our 10mm and put on the eye to hold it still, and go ahead and crank down so our cable won't slide out. Now with this excess, I'm actually going to zip tie it to the rod instead of cutting any more off. Now we can just zip tie the housing wherever we need it, and we're good to go. Last thing we need to do on this carburetor is plug up this fuel line. It actually uses the same size fuel line as the Predator did, so we're fine with the original. Okay, now the last thing is we can put our breather back on. We'll slide that into place and take our Phillips head screwdriver and tighten that hose clamp up. Now our choke is right here on our carburetor, but it looks like it's not going to interfere with nothing. That filter does rest against it, but I don't think it'll do anything. It shouldn't hit it, but if we see a problem with it, we can fix that at a later date. I'm just going to tighten down this hose clamp holding this to the valve cover. Looks like that choke works perfectly fine. So now we can give it a test fire. Okay, so we got that carburetor all installed. What I did with the nitrous barb for right now is I put a little vacuum cap over top of it. That should be perfectly fine to block that off for right now until we run the nitrous kit. So let's give this thing a start. Just removing a little bit of the old throttle setup. I tell you, it is nice having that old junky throttle setup off there. I hate the original Predator throttles. I think from now on, Mikuni carburetors will pretty much be on everything I have. I have to actually zip tie this clutch lever down. It's a lot easier to start it zip tying that where it isn't engaged. Okay, so we have the whole Mikuni carburetor set up, installed. We're going to prime it a couple of times, and then it should fire right up. Let's go ahead and choke it. Okay guys, so that was the installation of the Mikuni 22mm carburetor on a Predator 212 Hemi engine. Now, it did make a massive throttle feel. I can't stress that enough. This is the best performance part you can put on a Predator for sure. It gives you so much better of a throttle feel. It's instant power gains, and you have a lot more pedal to play with. And I didn't get a good road video because it's kind of hard to show you how good this carburetor works without trying one yourself. So definitely check out those links in the description below and pick one of these things up, because like I said, 10% discount code is going to knock, you know, almost $10 off this carburetor, and it'd be a nice Christmas present to yourself. Let's face it, you need it. Guys, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and always come back to Redbeard's Garage. I'm out.